You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the show. It's great to have you here. Excited to get into today's show because we're going to do something a little bit different. I don't often bring you real-world case studies, but what I wanted to do was show you what a really complex case looks like, not for you, but actually for a practitioner, but also the medical advice they received that I believe could be absolutely detrimental to their health, which is why you always want to look for a second opinion and find qualified functional medicine and natural health and integrative health practitioners near you. This is extremely important because what I'm about to share with you could be life-altering if you were to simply take the advice at face value. The nice thing is that when you're a virtual practice and when you have a larger team, you get to oversee and you get to see a lot of different labs that come in. So you notice trends with the majority of people. You notice and you see what stress does to someone's life. You see what hormones imbalances do. You see how foods affect people, how digestion, how parasites, like how all of these things work. But every once in a while, you also get someone that's a very complicated case. I want to let you know this, that most people believe that they are the most complicated case out there and that no other practitioner has been able to help them, and you're probably not going to be able to help them either, right? So we've heard that thousands and thousands of times. And I was that person back in the day, but here's the thing. I met my mentor. She knew what to do. She laid out the plan. She made the material very palatable for me. I could understand it. I got it. She let me know where I should research and look for more. And, I was off to the races. She didn't do all the work for me, but she pointed me in the right direction, found the underlying root causes that were the issue. And then I realized, okay, this is the work that I need to do. So here's the thing. I'm telling you right now, most people listening to the show, whether it's weight loss based, anti-aging based, or wellness based, even if you have an autoimmune issue, even if you have debilitating migraines, even if you have massive hormone imbalances, even the worst of the worst digestion, it's probably not as complicated as you think. I mean, honestly, most likely 99.9% of the time, it's not. It's not as complicated as you think. I'd love you to check out my show, $12.99, stephencabral.com/$12.99. And you can see how we dissect and break down and really open and extract the information from people and with lab tests on how to finally heal your digestion. If you had any issues on digestive issues, that's the show. We've done it for thyroid. I have many different thyroid shows that show you exactly what it's going to be. Even if you have an autoimmune thyroid issue, I show you how it can be related to the gut, how it can be related to heavy metals, how it can be related to environmental toxins, and how it can also be certain mineral-based deficiencies. So I'm telling you right now, there's a root cause to everything. There's always a reason why. And if you're not well, if you're aging too rapidly, or you're not able to lose the weight, you just haven't found your why. You haven't found your underlying root cause. Now, it took me much longer than most to find theirs, but here's the thing. I found mine. I want to help you find yours. I really do. It doesn't have to be me, but what I want you to do is I at least want to point you in the right direction. That's what it's all about. I want to just kind of turn you around, point you, due east if that's where you need to go, and then I want you to walk in that direction, right? So I want you to at least get you started. You can work with a local integrative health practitioner, a local functional medicine doctor, a local naturopathic doctor. It could be a chiropractor that knows functional medicine. It could be a personal trainer that knows functional medicine. Does not matter to me the title. What matters to me is they have the knowledge base. They're able to run some labs ideally, or that you can get them the labs. They know how to read the material, and they know what to do for you for your protocols. Because what I'm about to share with you right now is, I don't believe it had to happen. So here's the thing. Why don't I get right into it? Here's the thing. I had someone come to me. I don't do a lot of blood work-based analysis anymore for people. That's your annual blood work. And the reason is that it takes a lot of time. Now, it's easy for me to read over someone's annual blood work. That's not a problem. But when someone comes to me with a disease diagnosis from the blood, that I mean that I know that there's been a lot of breakdown over the years, and I wish I had seen them 5 years ago, right? 10 years ago. Well, here's the thing. This is someone that I did start seeing 8 years ago. And I was able to work with them at the time, and they were able to get well. They were able to overcome acid reflux, carpal tunnel, stress, inflammatory issues, gut-based issues, headaches, sleep problems, right? But I stopped seeing them. It's not like life happens, right? It wasn't a choice. It's just like, oh, they were well for the most part. And so they just kind of like kept moving forward. But I didn't get to do their annual review. And so what I'm saying to you is, if you're working with a doctor or integrative health practitioner, please work with them at least on a semi-annual basis. See them once every 6 months. That's it. Whatever fee they charge, trust me, it's worth it. It really is. Without your health, what do you have? Right? What else do you have? You can have the best career in the world. I work with millionaires and billionaires, okay? When their health is deteriorating, they can't work. And also, they don't even get to enjoy their retirement. They don't get to enjoy the later years that they work so hard for. Why? Because they let their health go. And I know this firsthand working with them. So don't let that be you, okay? I'm telling you right now, see your practitioner every 6 months. Just make sure, run labs every 6 months, or at the very least, run them once a year. A lot of this can be prevented because you catch things early, right? So here's the thing. Starting working with this person was something called essential thrombocythemia. Okay, it's just called ET for short. Essential thrombocythemia. What is this? And again, I'm just going to refer to it as ET. And honestly, I don't want you to get caught up what this name is, because all names is a conglomeration of symptoms. Now, they do matter. They do matter. I'm not saying that. But what I want you to do is don't say because this person has this disease that is not applicable to you, because it is. Replace this with rheumatoid arthritis, replace this with cancer, replace this with migraines, replace this with gut issues, with anything, okay? It's the same story. Remember, your genetics matter when the environment has overloaded and overflowed your rain barrel, right? So when you hit that trigger, when the environment has been overloading and overflowing your rain barrel, that's when the disease comes about. Well, what disease do you get? Well, that's when genetics matter. You get the disease that's already programmed into the body, okay? Now remember, you can turn off the program, but it's so much harder to do it that way. Don't allow the program to start running in the first place. If you've ever had little kids, think about how difficult it is to get them to turn a TV off or to turn their iPad off. It's a struggle, right? But if they never started watching that in the first place, I know that's not easy as well. So the perfect analogy, so much easier. Here's the thing. Keep an eye on it. I'm going to keep saying that over the course of the show, but what essential thrombocythemia is it's an overproduction of platelet-forming cells. So these are often called, and this doesn't really matter, but megakaryocytes. And what it does is it's too many blood clotting cells. So we have to watch out for this, because what could it cause? Well, heart attacks, strokes, other based issues. But again, that is not as important. What I need you to look at is that this is something that's gone a little too far. So what happened now? Well, they went to see a specialist. And what did the specialist decide to do? Well, and again, I'm not going to name the drugs because I don't want to disparage the industry. They were putting them on what's called a chemotherapy-based drug. Well, this chemotherapy drug is used to destroy a lot of these platelets and red blood cells. The problem is, it's always a little bit of guessing game as to how many do you destroy? What's the potency? And we know that chemotherapy comes with a host of other side effects. But here's the other thing with conventional medicine. They have no known cure for this disease, okay? When you come to something called essential thrombocythemia, ET, there is no cure. You are on this chemo-based drug for the rest of your life. And again, I don't know, but it's not my opinion to even say. I can't imagine you'll have the healthiest and longest life possible being on chemotherapy for the rest of your life. Again, maybe it's an incorrect assumption on my part, But I'd be willing to bet if we asked those people who have been on chemotherapy or on these specific drugs that they're not living their best life. Now, here's the thing. If you have to be on them, I understand. And I support you 100%. And what you do is you try to combat the side effects of these chemo-based drugs. And you use only as much as you need to in order to be able to mitigate those side effects. So again, I am in full support of conventional medicine when it is the last resort and the thing that needs to be used. But I'm about to take you through their blood work and show you that we might be looking at something much deeper with an actual root cause that we can work on that may very well resolve this without having to lead to a life-altering drug. So here's the thing. I got their blood work. They gave me the login to their account, and I was able to go back to 2011. And I could begin to look at the story of them, right? I knew I could look at their symptoms of what they were dealing with. But honestly, their symptoms weren't really bad, which is why you have to run lab tests, because they had no major overt symptoms, which is why they've always thought they've been healthy for the last couple of years. But when you look at the blood work over the last couple of years, you see platelets at a higher level. But it's not just platelets. That's the problem. Platelets are what give it this disease name. When I looked at their blood work, they also had high lymphocytes. And when I look at high lymphocytes, I know from a functional medicine perspective that this can be from a viral-based infection, acute or chronic. I also know that high lymphocytes can simply mean non-specific inflammation. And how many of us out there have inflammation? Maybe it's from your gut. Maybe it's from an injury. Maybe it's from some type of non-specific pain. Maybe the inflammation is from, again, poor posture, right? Like you're not in proper alignment. So there's a lot of reasons for inflammation. Another reason for high lymphocytes, toxicity, systemic toxicity, that conventional medicine almost never seems to acknowledge. Now, again, every medical doctor and every naturopathic doctor, DO, etc., will show you that they take a course called toxicology, that they are ensuring that they know about environmental toxins. This is extremely important, but it's never talked about. We hardly ever speak about that. Another reason for high lymphs is mononucleosis. I spoke about that a little while back, and especially on the podcast. But mononucleosis can raise lymphocytes. But again, it doesn't trigger me right away to think, oh, this is an uptick of EBV, Epstein-Barr virus, because you also then look at white blood cells. So I'm going to start to make connections with you. I don't want this to get overly complicated, but I want you to know if you have someone on your side, and it does not have to be me, but if someone is on your side looking at these things, there are multiple ways to look at it. This person also had high basophils. Well, if we look at why white blood cells or basophils might be elevated, from a functional medicine perspective, we know it means tissue inflammation or intestinal parasites, okay? So now we're starting to look at, okay, multiple inflammatory factors. This person clearly has a large amount of inflammation. They have high lymphocytes, white blood cells essentially, high basophils, essentially immune system, right? They also had lower levels of sodium. These were clinical based. So this means it was actually off in their white blood cells. So this could be lower levels of cortisol. Now, which means adrenal hypofunction or Addison's disease. Why this is important for me is because I know that cortisol is a very potent anti-inflammatory as well, at least in the short term. So if this person's suffering from inflammation issues and they have low sodium, is it possible that this person's burnt out? That they're no longer producing that aldosterone? That they don't have that same cortisol-based production? They're called glucocorticoids. Now, here's where it starts to get more fun, and this is why you need a doctor or someone that specializes in being able to read your blood work, to be able to look at lab results that are not out of range, but they're not optimal. I'm going to repeat that. A lot of times when you run your blood work or an at-home lab test, you'll see results and you'll notice that they're close to being out of range, but they're not out of range. Those lab results matter to functional medicine doctors, okay? Here's why. We get a lot of data before they get into a disease state. And this person had their MCH, you don't need to know what these mean, and their MCHC is basically how much oxygen can we get into these red blood cells, right? Well, they were abnormal. MCH was high, and MCHC was low. And from a functional medicine perspective, even though they're two different markers, they mean the same thing. Typically, it means some type of anemia or a lower level of oxygen. But this type of anemia isn't from iron. It's actually more so from B12 or folate, as long as their iron levels, as long as their ferritin levels are normal. So you have to look at B12 and folate, but also it can be from hypochlorhydria or chlorhydria. And the reason why, that's low stomach acid. But keep in mind, if you have low stomach acid, it's a double-edged sword, because low stomach acid will not allow you to be able to extract and break down those good B vitamins. Extremely important to look at. They also had a high normal level of eosinophils, another type of immune-based cell that's related to sometimes intestinal parasites, tissue breakdown, or food allergies or environmental sensitivities. Sometimes asthma as well. But having known this client, I know they don't have asthma, so we can rule out those reasons. They also had a high normal level, so these are all normal but elevated levels or lower levels of potassium. This can again mean lower levels of adrenal function. It can mean dehydration. It can mean tissue breakdown, or it can mean metabolic acidosis. And metabolic acidosis is actually how hard your body has to work to buffer those acids in the body. And again, most doctors are not looking at that. Chloride was low normal. Why does that matter? Well, really hard to produce stomach acid with low chloride. And that's because stomach acid is hydrogen chloride, HCl. Well, if you're missing the chloride, really hard to make HCl. So it's important for us to look at as well. It can also mean lower levels of adrenal function. Glucose was off, but I asked them and I said, okay, your glucose was a little elevated. But in this case, it was elevated because it wasn't a fasted test. So that mattered to me, right? I looked at that. And I said, okay, this isn't really a blood sugar-based dysregularity, because I'm going to have you run your glucometer in the morning and just see if you fall between about 75 and 95. Okay. Alkaline phosphatase. These are all things on blood work. I did a show. I'm going to have my team link this up. Just head on over to stephencabral.com/1306. All right. Head on over there. I'll have my team link it up. Title of the show was something like what blood work to ask your doctor for, right? And it's all of these different numbers. So alkaline phosphatase, this is a number when it's low normal, and oftentimes it's low normal below like a 60. It means zinc deficiency. Bottom line, zinc deficiency. Well, if you don't have enough zinc, what could it lead to? Inflammation, gut issues, tissue breakdown, low hormones, low adrenal function. So I have to say, okay, interesting. They're missing zinc. And their vitamin D is low normal, yet they're taking vitamin D. How can this be? Well, it could be cofactors, right? So your functional medicine doctor will say, oh, they might be missing the vitamin K. They might be missing the magnesium. They might be missing cofactors that vitamin D needs. So that was interesting to look at. Now, all of those things, MCH, MCHC, eosinophils, potassium, chloride, glucose, alkaline phosphatase, and vitamin D3. I just named 8 markers that were also off from a functional medicine level, like an optimal level, versus just the 4 that were out of range clinically. But all of those matter because we're moving towards not a disease diagnosis, but a dis-ease diagnosis, right? Something's off with the body and we're figuring it out. So I asked them to go back to their PCP and ask them to run additional tests. Believe it or not, this person hadn't had a lipid profile, which is their cholesterol, their LDL, their HDL, their triglycerides, and their total cholesterol. They hadn't run that in almost 2 years. I don't understand how a doctor, when you're looking at platelets, isn't running a lipid profile. I'm going to get to that in just a second. That's going to be kind of like the big surprise at the end. They didn't run their CRP or their high sensitivity CRP. I talk about these on Friday reviews. They didn't run their LDH, lactate dehydrogenase, to look at tissue breakdown. They didn't run their fibrinogen. Well, I want them to run fibrinogen. That's not a normal one to run. I want them to run their uric acid. I want them to run their thyroid panel. I want them to run hemoglobin A1C and insulin. Okay, I want them to look at blood sugar. I want to look at all these things because I want to look at, these are all markers for inflammation as well. It's not just blood sugar. If you have elevated level of hemoglobin A1C and insulin, well, you're looking at elevated levels of inflammation. They go together. You can't really have one without the other. Really challenging to have that happen. And then from a functional medicine perspective, I'm going to have them run, like right away, they're running the Big 5 for sure. And they're also running a stool test, okay? So why? Well, I want to look at toxic metals. I want to look at parasites. They had 2 markers that could be parasites. I want to look at intestinal-based permeability. I want to look at their saliva levels for their cortisol. Okay, super important. I want to look at their thyroid. And here's why. And this is kind of the big reveal. I went back to their lipid profile 2 years ago, and I saw 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, their cholesterol was consistently above 250. Their LDL was consistently above 130. Their HDL was elevated as well, which a lot of doctors would say, oh no, but it's okay because your HDL is elevated, consider your good cholesterol. So it's okay because the ratio is okay. That is not necessarily true. Yes, it's better to have higher levels of HDL if you have higher levels of LDL and total cholesterol because it helps to balance, because think of it as an antioxidant. It helps to balance the oxidation that's going on with the LDL. But here's the thing. Always ask yourself, why is my good form of cholesterol elevated in the first place? What type of oxidative process is going on in the body that my liver, my body needs to produce this higher level of HDL? So I don't want people, there's a lot of doctors out there, and be very careful who you're listening to. Be very careful. They're okay with you having cholesterol above 250 and 300. I am not. I am not playing, and I apologize if this is not the best terminology, but I'm not going to have you play Russian roulette with your health. I'm not. For some people, having high cholesterol is no big deal. And yes, you can run an advanced NMR and advanced cholesterol profiles. Great. And I do that. I agree. It's great. But here's the thing. I want you within the typical safe zone, because I'm not going to take any chances with your health and your longevity or mine. Why would I? Why would I? So my immediate need right now, yes, I'm going to help. I'm going to run all these labs, and I'm going to get a lot of data. You can see how complicated this can be. But remember, if you're a truly complicated case where you need to be put on chemo drugs, hey, it's complicated. It is. Sometimes it's always not just, do the CBO protocol. Again, that's going to help a lot of people out there. Do a functional medicine detox. It's going to help a ton of people out there. But there are true complicated cases in life. But you know what? They can be helped as well. So this took me 90 minutes to look at all of their labs, 90 minutes to make an assessment for them. And that's all it was. And that's a lot of time. But we did it. And here's what I found. Based on all of my information that I had, and based on this big premise that they have a lot of inflammation in their body, they're missing a lot of nutrients. They very well may have parasites, and they very well may have heavy metal toxicity because of their profession. I know the profession they're in. But above all else, they have high cholesterol and they have inflammation in their arteries. What happens when you have microscopic tears in your arteries? You have inflammation, but what else does your body do? It produces a greater amount of platelets. It's called atherosclerosis. And every medical doctor should know this. And most do. Don't get me wrong. But when you go to an oncologist, or you go to a cancer specialist, or you go to someone, and this is what they do, they immediately go for what they know to do. And I'm not faulting them, and I'm not saying that this specialist, this doctor, did not have this patient's best interest in mind. But if they knew more, if they were educated more broadly, it doesn't mean that they're not brilliant. They're most likely brilliant. And I'm not disparaging them. They're way smarter than I am in their particular field. There's no doubt about that. But you have, as a doctor, you also have to be a little bit of a generalist. And you need to understand that atherosclerosis can cause an elevated level of platelets. And if you don't know that, and you put a client, or they're clients to me, but patients to an oncologist, if you put a patient on a chemo-based drug and it starts to hurt other parts of their body, their osteoporosis and other areas, you did so when there may have been a cleaner, easier way to do it with a deeper underlying root cause. And I wouldn't even say it's easier, but it's more beneficial in the long run. So here's the thing. If I don't at least, and I told this to them, I said, I don't know that my hypothesis in working theory is going to be the answer. But what I can tell you is that you have serious underlying health-based issues that I know that we can resolve. And when we resolve them and your blood work goes back to normal, your cholesterol goes to normal, your inflammatory markers go to normal, I help the vitamin D. I help the alkaline phosphatase. I help the eosinophils, the basophils. I find out if there's parasites with a stool test. I get the chloride levels and the sodium levels back up. If I do that and you still have elevated platelets, now it's a different discussion because you've rebalanced every other part of your body. And then if your bone marrow, where these red blood cells are made, is still improperly making red blood cells, okay, well, one, you have a healthier body. It's going to be better able to tolerate the chemo. We'll work with you on detoxing. We'll work with you on saunas. We'll work with you with all of, getting this stuff out of your system. We'll help you with that. No doubt about it. But it's my belief right now, and I want to do a follow-up case with this in about, it's going to take 4 months. Again, not everything is a quick fix, right? I'm never going to lie with you, and I'm not going to be someone to hype things up. We're going to correct this over 12 weeks, okay? But it's going to take me another month to get these other at-home labs in. And I will give you a re-report on this, and I will let you know when I've helped this person rebalance the underlying causes that are leading to all of these issues, the atherosclerosis and the abnormal numbers, when those have been corrected and their labs are back at normal value because I know I can help her with this, then I'll say, okay, now let's look at your platelets. I honestly believe, and I would never tell someone if I didn't believe it, I think we have a better than 50% chance that this is all going to be corrected and there'll be no need to be put on chemotherapy for the rest of her life. I honestly believe that. And I believe that there's a better than not chance, and that's all that you need. All you need is a chance to not have to go through this. And either way, you probably added a decade to your life by repairing those arteries, which aren't going to happen overnight. And even when we rebalance the labs in 4 months, I need to remove 50 plus years of potential hardening of those arteries and stenosis. And I'll work on that too, even though it won't show up on a blood work lab. But I know with that much inflammation over the past 5 years, there has to be some hardening of those arteries. So I'll work on that. But what I did, and again, it's not me, right? All I'm doing is practicing my profession. You're most likely an expert at whatever it is that you do. I'm just trying to be the best I can do at this and give people hope. And that's what today's podcast and show is really all about. Get a second, get a third opinion. This is your life. This is your body. And I really believe, yes, sometimes we need massive medical intervention. And I'm so grateful that we have that. In Boston, we have some of the most amazing universities, MIT, Harvard, Boston University, Tufts. I could go on. We have Mass General Hospital. We have Beth Israel. We have Brigham and Women's. We have Mount Auburn. We have all these great teaching and great hospitals. But sometimes we have to go back to saying why. It's always about asking why. Why is my bone marrow right now? Why are the precursors to producing these thrombocytes, these platelets? Why is it malfunctioning? Why? Could it be something else? Could there be something else? And we found the reason why. We don't know, but we found a reason why. Atherosclerosis is a reason why your body would be producing more platelets. If we correct that and the platelets drop as well, we found the underlying root cause and we prevented this person for the next 20, 30, 40 years from being on chemo-based medication. And if we do that, right, that's what it's all about, right? There are no thank yous. There are no whatever that you could ever give anyone in this type of a situation. The practitioner gets to feel like they did their job and they're serving their highest purpose. And the client or the patient gets obviously the satisfaction of now knowing that they've repaired the body at a root causal level, but also they're going to have more life to the years, which is what it's all about. Thank you so much for tuning into today's show. If this was helpful and you'd like me to do more case studies in the future, I would love to hear that. Just head on over to my Instagram page, which is just Stephen Cabral. It's Stephen with a PH. And you can also let us know at cabralsupportgroup.com. Love to hear about those things too. But just let me know if this was helpful. This was a complicated one. But if you'd like to hear other case studies, a little bit easier with balancing female hormones, with working on the gut, with removing heavy metals, I'd be happy to do that as well. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. And for details of how we practice like this, head on over to integrativehealthpractitioner.org if that can be helpful as well. Take care, everyone. Have an amazing day. Thank you. Before you go, I wanted to share a personal story with you. The real reason I began to get well finally is because I figured out what was wrong with me. And that might seem pretty obvious, but I went from doctor to doctor for over 2 years before discovering at-home functional medicine lab testing. These are the labs that enabled me to finally figure out what was wrong with my hormones, blood sugar, electrolytes, and gut health. And once I knew what was wrong, I could then follow a proven plan in order to rebalance my body from the inside out. This is why I believe so strongly in functional medicine lab testing and why I've made it my mission to share these labs with the world. Now at equa.life, you can order an at-home lab test or a lab bundle for you and your family and be able to complete it within the week. Plus, the EquaLife difference is that you're not left to try to read and figure out these labs on your own. We explain what your lab numbers mean, what they mean in the much bigger picture, and then how to go about rebalancing your body in order to heal. To see our full selection of lab tests or to set up a free lab selection call to find out what labs may be best for you, simply head on over to equa.life/labs. And do remember, we ship these all over the world. To find out more and to set up your free lab selection call, simply head on over to equa.life/labs. That's EQUI.LIFE/labs.